Excellent. Well, let's go ahead and get started. My name's David Wayne Reed, and this is an info session about the Catalyze grant and how to apply yourself. We're going to demystify the grant process. Catalyze, this is our second year of this program. This is made possible by the generous support from the Windgate Foundation and again, Mid-America Arts Alliance. So with that said, if you're entering now, go ahead and maybe introduce yourself in the chat. Your name, your discipline, what you make, what where you're residing, which county in
Mhm.
Arkansas you're in.
Here's the application, and then there's the barcode of the secondary. Okay.
Hi. Um, if you have a question, if you could put that in the chat, my colleague Kyle will be monitoring the chat. And so there's no sound interruption. If everybody could make sure their mics are off to mute for now, and then we'll open up for some questions and answers toward the end of this hour. Cool? All right. So again, this is the Catalyze Grant Program. We are generously supported by the Windgate Foundation. This is a program of Mid-America Arts Alliance for whom I work. We can go to the next slide. So to begin, let's begin with acknowledging the land that this grant covers. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the ancestral traditional lands of the Caddo, the Osage, and the Quapaw. We acknowledge the land that we stand on as a way of honoring and expressing gratitude for the First Peoples, as well as for the Black and brown bodies who have built this country that we live and create upon. Next slide. So this is how to apply yourself, demystifying the artist grant. Raise your hands. Has anyone applied for this grant before? Applied for a grant before? Yeah, few. Great. Sometimes the grant process can be really, really intimidating. So I want to break it down. We're going to go through all of the mechanisms of this grant and really break it down. And like I said, take questions at the end of this session. Next slide. So who am I? My name is David Wayne Reed, he, him, his, and I am the Constituent Engagement Specialist for Artist Services at Mid-America. One really cool thing about my department here at Mid-America, we have an Artist Services department. We are the only regional arts organization that has a Artist Services department. And what I really love about our department is that we are all artists. We're not gatekeepers. We're in the arena. Like Brene Brown said, we're in the arena. We're doing the work. We apply for grants and residencies. We get rejected from grants and residencies. So we are on the field with you. We will not be applying for this grant. So, but we know what it's like. This is an image from my second film, Land and Flower, that has played all over the country, and I'm so proud of that. I am currently getting ready to work on my third film, The Bureaucracy of Trees, which is currently in production now. Next slide. So Catalyze provides grant funding and professional development opportunities to individual artists. This is not for nonprofits. This is for individual artists of all disciplines in the following counties: Cleburne, Conway, Faulkner, Garland, Grant, Hot Spring, Jefferson, Lonoke, Prairie, Pulaski, Saline, Van Buren, White, and Yell. I hope that you found your county of residence on this page. You are still in the running to receiving a Catalyze grant. Next slide. So this grant is 3 tiers. Thus our little golden circle logo, those 3 circles. The first is, this is a $10,000 grant, y'all. These are practice-based grants, so you do not have to apply with a project. I think a lot of times artists, we have to put forward what our project is, what our budget is, how we're going to spend this money, what our timeline is. It's not like that with this grant. So I want you to kind of shake out those preconceptions. artists receive $10,000 grants to advance your artistic career. This is specifically to support your practice. So I want you to think right now, what would change your practice? What would advance your practice at this point in time? How could $10,000 help you to achieve that next part of your career? Okay. Secondly, professional development. All of our programs at Mid-America are all undergirded by professional development. We don't believe in a top-down approach like teacher to student. We activate other artists who serve as facilitators. And so you can get time with these facilitators and with each other at a professional development retreat that will be held in June of 2024 to develop, refine, and implement your strategic plans for your creative practice. Okay. And then finally, the third leg of this stool is mentoring. So you will be working with a network of other artists of multiple disciplines, but also have access to our Mid-America Peer Artist Facilitators for one-on-one mentoring sessions, as well as small group connections. I think this is really cool. I'm in Kansas City, and I often find like I get some opportunities and I know how to navigate kind of the scene here, but oftentimes we want to get out of our counties, our cities, and into other locations. This is a really great way to access more than 50, I think it's upwards of 70 now, peer artist facilitators across our region and beyond that have a lot of different skill sets as well as a lot of different disciplines. You might be able to connect with a visual artist in Dallas who knows a lot about fundraising, say, or someone in Kansas City, a filmmaker who might know a lot about grant writing. So think about who you might want to get to know and how that might help advance your career also. So again, those are the three foundational elements of the Catalyze grant. Next slide. All right, so we'll just read through this once, but to make sure you're eligible, be sure to be at least 21 years of age by the application due date, which if you're taking notes is January 22nd of 2024 at 5 p.m. Okay, January 22nd of 2024 at 5 p.m. You are a full-time resident of the state of Arkansas and you have lived at least 1 year by the application due date of January 22nd, 2024, and you've been living in one of these following 16 counties. We've already gone through that. Y'all are good. Next up, you will create work in any artistic discipline, including but not limited to dance, film, literary, music, theater, and visual art. Okay. You have a resume that demonstrates at least 3 years of engagement in a creative practice prior to the application due date, January 22nd, 2024. That's 3 years that you've just committed to a practice. I've had some people ask a question like, mothers who kind of sidetrack their career or put down their careers for a little bit to raise their kids and then come back. If you have established 3 years and you're making work, you're eligible. Okay. That's totally fine. You have that resume that demonstrates that. You will attend the Catalyze retreat June 22nd and 23rd, 2024. You have to attend this. This is part of the requirements. So if grandma's having a hip surgery or your niece is getting married or whatnot might be happening during that time and you're not available to make it, this year is not your time, okay? At this retreat, we hold that in the Capitol Hotel in Little Rock, and all of your meals and lodging is provided. We will feed you very well, so bring your elastic pants if you are selected. Be a U.S. citizen, a permanent resident, or have non-resident status, as well as provide a valid Social Security number if you are selected for funding. We won't require that upon your initial application, only if you should be selected, and that's just so we can give you money. Be in good standing with Mid-America Arts Alliance. You have no delinquent reports or grant documents. You have not received a grant of $1,000 or more through any other granting program from MAW during our last fiscal year. You have not previously received a Catalyze grant. and you are not currently enrolled in an undergraduate or graduate program. That is the eligibility. So if you are still in the running, you are still in the running. All right, let's move on to the next. So I like this slide. We have these giant whiteboards in the room. This is from our last Catalyze retreat and back in June. And we asked participants to write what they feel, what they're looking for, what their expectations are. And these are some of those. They entered open. They were feeling joyous, collaborative, connection, electricity. They learned more about paid opportunities, money, fellowships, community, connection, imagination. Those are some things you can kind of expect from this convening in this program. Next slide. So this is the big question. Why? Why do you want this grant and why do you want it now? You don't have to answer me, but I want you to really think about the why. Why do you want it? Is it validation? Because if it is, that's the wrong reason to go for it, okay? You should want this grant to be able to move and advance your career to that next level. Okay, money is great, but also the community of artists that you will become in concert and cohort with, maybe even collaboration with, that can be a big why for wanting a grant. It can be a myriad of reasons, but you should really spend some time clarifying what that why is. Next slide. So we talk a lot here in Artist Services about the golden circle. I don't know if you all are familiar with Simon Sinek. He has a pretty famous TED Talk. He also has a book, and the name of the book is really the thesis of the book. It's called Start with Why. And yeah, thanks, Kyle. My colleague Kyle, so sharp over on the chat with that link. But we really fundamentally want to start with why. Generally, artists are asked, what are you doing? What do you do? What are you doing next? And we start with, I am a filmmaker. I make films using a drone and a phone. Why am I doing it? I want to bring awareness to the erasure of the tallgrass prairie and other environmental concerns, right? That's my story. But what is your story? And how interesting would it be if we asked, why are you doing it? And then work backwards, right? I'm doing this because I want to raise awareness. I'm going to do it by making a film. My film is this, right? It's so clarifying, and it was really a game changer for me when I stopped thinking about what first and started thinking about why. Anyway, very valuable book. We're not paid by Simon Sinek. I just wanted to give some props to him and his ideas. Next slide. So what are the benefits of grant writing? I think one of the biggest benefits of writing, period, is that it clears up messy thinking. You get your words out on the page and you can kind of see what you've got and then start to edit it and see really what you're talking about. I write a lot of jibber jab to get to the meat of what I really want and what I'm proposing. That's one of the main benefits for me. But I think as you get into grants, a lot of different grants ask for the same components each time. They want your artist statement. They want your artist bio. They want to know, generally, this is not the case for this, but your project description. Those are things that you can have on the ready and copy and paste into this grant, into future grant applications. That's one of the benefits. Once you start kind of getting these building blocks really settled, it's very helpful as you pursue future opportunities. Next slide. So I know grants can be kind of scary, and I think that we have this thought, I know I did, when I'm writing a proposal that I have to use a lot of 25-cent words, a lot of graduate school artist talk, artist speak, use words like intersection, and I don't know, whatever the keyword is, the buzzword is right now. But really, a grant proposal is just a story, right? Who are you? What are you doing? Where do you want to be? It follows kind of a dramatic structure. right? So I don't want you to be too intimidated by it because you're just telling a story, and luckily that story is your own. Next slide. So I want to go down what's included in this application. And these are the components, right? So your artist biography, your artist statement, your resume or CV. You don't, one is not better than the other. Just what it is, either or is fine. Work samples and work sample summary. I think these are the most important. These are the most important, okay? So think about and let it swim in your head. What are those work samples? What are some of your favorite work samples you would be putting forward? And do you have good quality documentation of those works? You get 5, okay? But think about that. And then moving on down, we have a series of 4 narrative questions, and we'll go through those. And then finally, your proof of residence. That can be a cable bill, light bill, driver's license, whatever it is completely fine. Those are the components. And like I said, you're going to use your artist bio, your artist statement, your resume, your work samples, your work sample summary. All of that you can use for any myriad of grant applications. Really, with the Catalyze, where this is different is we don't ask you for a budget, we don't ask you for a timeline, but we do ask you these narrative questions. But everything else is pretty standard to how most grant proposals work in the arts world. Okay, next slide. Who are you? Your bio. Tell us who you are. Next slide. And it's really just as simple about that. Who are you? What is your work like? What have you done? What about your work? What have you done? Written in the third person. David Wayne Reed is a writer, director, producer from rural Kansas. My films can be seen here, here, and here. I've done this. Learn more about me at davidwaynereed.com, right? It can be just as succinct as that. Oftentimes with artist bios, a lot of different organizations ask for different links. You know, you might get 200 words for your bio in one place. You might only get 100 words for your bio in another place. So I would write out like the big bio and then be able to kind of treat it like an accordion a little bit. It's like, oh, I only have 200. Well, I can't go into all these other things, but here's my 50 word, right? That's a good way to just like have that on the ready and be able to cut, copy, and paste into other opportunities. Okay, that's artist bio. Next slide. For us, you get 100 words. For this application, you have 100 words. And I always think, and I always talk about, I always quote this, it was the mathematician and philosopher Pascal who said, I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have time. The devil is really in winnowing it down. You know, it's easy to kind of get out all, just puke out all the stuff, you know, put it all out there, but really cutting it down really takes the time, right? It's like a sculptor. You get work with a bunch of clay. You got to really work it down to that 100 word or whatnot. Okay, that's the trick. So I would really get all of that information out and then maybe share that with a friend and see what's like the bare minimum that you can get by with in those 100 words that really expresses the fullness of what you've done. Next slide. So resume or CV, it can be one or the other. I find that people that use a CV, it's generally professors. It's generally an academic kind of thing. You don't have to have one. It won't set your application above others. If you don't have one, I apply with a resume. That's totally fine. CV is your comprehensive history. Resume is your curated selection of relevant information. Use terminology that everyone will understand. I just did a session an hour ago and someone was like, well, I have an MFA and a B, you know, I also have this CAD and RES. It's like, I don't even know what that is. What are all those accreditations? You know, most people know what an MFA and a BFA is, but if you have specialized Acronyms, spell them out. Use reverse chronological order, include most recent entries on top. Last year, I was on a panel for our airport. We have a new airport terminal here in Kansas City, and I read about 1,400 applications, and we had some that would list like work from 2012 at the top. But then you saw that they did work more recently, but it appears that you're not making current work. So I would really list your most current up top. Otherwise, it gives an indication that it's old work. You haven't been in the game for a while. So just something to think about. Next, use strong and simple design on your resume. Avoid elaborate templates. I'm not going to pick on anybody, but there's always somebody, and we always get like a resume that's really flowery or overtly artistic. And I think sometimes applicants might think, I'm going to show them how great of an artist I am across all things. It can get kind of jumbled up, and it can get a little messy, and it can really take the focus off the words and your experience. So I would deflower your resumes and CVs and just make it as straightforward as possible. And then finally, well, not finally, I've got a few more bullet points. Share that document as a PDF. And I'm guilty of this. I've done that, where you have your resume or whatever it is on a Word document. Well, and then you upload it, and then it all the tabs kind of go wonky, and share it as a PDF. So it shows up to us and the panelists exactly as you intended it to be. Use clean, consistent formatting, be sure to use the same font across, and just be consistent and clean. Creative, but truthful. Don't need to be George Santos about it. Tell the truth. And then an 11 to 12 point typeface is easier, and sans serif is easier to read digitally. General length of a resume. That's a great question. Thank you, Mary Ellen. There are people that have been in this game for a while. I personally, I have a 3-pager. Do not go over 3 pages. Curate it down to the most relevant information that supports what you're doing right now. Are references included in the resume? You don't need to put references in here in this resume. That's not necessary. Just your experience for this matter. For this application. Great question, Scarlett. And I know people who have like long resumes, we want to shove it all in. Keep it at 11 to 12 point typeface. I have seen people like go as low as 8 point, and I'm a blind old man. I can't see that, and most people can't. So keep it legible and easy to read. Okay. Great questions. Thank you so much for that. Next slide. So artist statements, I remember when I came into contact with artist statement, I didn't know how that even applied to me. I didn't even know how I would do that. I was a theater maker. I was an actor. And so my artist statement was, I do what the director tells me to do, right? I didn't realize that I had agency over telling you what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, why I'm doing it, and what influences and inspires me. That's the formula. I'm giving you all the Mad Libs version of how to write an artist statement. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? How am I doing it? What influences and inspires me? I am a writer, director, and filmmaker. I do that by using drones, phones, and community engagement. Why? I want to raise awareness for environmental catastrophes. What influences and inspires me? I love Koyaanisqatsi as much as I love the Velvet Underground. I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but already that sets me apart. And I just gave you very little information, but I gave it to you succinctly. You can expand on that a little bit, but those are the basic bones of writing an artist statement. What am I doing? How am I doing it? Why am I doing it? And what influences or inspires me? Next slide. So this is an opportunity for you to describe what you make, how and why you make it. It should give the panelists, the reviewers, insight into your work, your inspiration, and your process. Be written in the first person. You do get 250 words for this statement. Again, this is something, like I said, should be thought of as an accordion, because sometimes you're allowed more words, sometimes often you're allowed less words. This is a pretty average word count for this artist statement. Okay. Next slide. So work samples, and I can't belabor this enough. Show your best, highest quality work, and documentation matters. It matters. When I was a young artist, I was told document, document, document. And I was like, oh yeah, I got it. I'll just, set my camera or set, whatever up and take a video, one angle of my theater production. Well, I don't have to tell you. I think everybody knows theater on video is terrible. It looks terrible. It doesn't convey any of it. So really put some money into getting really high quality images, high quality video or sound quality, because it matters and it shows the panelist how you care for your artwork. I'll tell you, back to that airport commission, we received not only one, but I think up to maybe 4 work samples that were sketches drawn on napkins. These were for $400,000 installations. That is not good enough. And when you get a lot of applications, you're going to look at your work samples first, and you will be judged on your work samples. Are they high quality? Does this artist care about putting their best foot forward? A grainy photo is not going to cut it. Luckily, we've got amazing iPhones that do a really good job. It's really just about the angle and perspective. And if there's anything artists have in spades, it's angle and perspective, right? That is so important. I really just can't preach enough about your work samples. Again, go back, think about, what are those 5 images? What are those 5 artworks that you have that you want to put forward? I often think about this too, about like, if I'm cutting a greatest hits album, what are my best? What makes your heart sing? Your instinct will tell you, your gut will tell you. And if your gut doesn't tell you, a sassy friend will tell you, okay? Next slide. So work samples, you can include up to a total of 5 artwork samples. I always get this question, so I'm going to nip this in the bud right now. I get every time artists say, can I put multiple works on the same page and turn that in? No, that's cheating. That's asking for an inch and taking a mile. However, if it is a part of a series, say there's like a murmuration of clay birds, right? So I would want to see an image of the full installation of all of them, and then maybe a breakout, a close-up, so I can see the hand articulation of that clay or whatnot. That is appropriate for that. But the 5 artwork samples, it should be 5 different titles of work. I'm submitting my work Mother. I'm submitting Land and Flower. I'm submitting, Eternal Harvest. This, each of those artwork samples should have their own title. Those samples may be uploaded as either JPEGs, preferably, or as, if you're a performer like I am, you might have links on SoundCloud or Vimeo or YouTube, anything like that. You can submit those URL links, and that is totally fine. Let me get through this and I'll answer your question, Scarlett. All uploaded files should be titled with the name of the artist. This is a personal pet peeve of mine. I never, ever want to see an attachment that says IMG 7459. Put your name on it. You would put your name on the artwork you've created. Please label that. It shows a pride in your work, and it also helps us with wayfinding. When we're looking at a lot of examples, it's like, oh yeah, that was David Wayne Reed and his sample that. It says that clearly. There are no special characters or spaces. Don't need that. We can conserve some paper. Uploaded files may not be larger than 1 MB. Now, this is the other thing. And again, I will say with this application, and I think it's a good idea, select what those works are now, and then figure out if those will be uploadable. Recently, I uploaded a video file for a residency I applied to, and it was too big, and it was kind of late at night because I know how we are. We wait until the last minute, and that's all good, no shame. But every tech mishap will always show itself to you at 11 o'clock at night, or in this case, 4 o'clock in the afternoon before it's due at 5. It's Murphy's Law. You will always have a technical snafu. So make sure those files fit and are uploaded. I would really think about that and move that to the top of your process while you're applying for this, okay? Next up, I don't know, Kyle, you might have answered Scarlett's question. I'm going to let you deal with that. Let's move to the next slide. And again, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end, so we can talk about any of this. So make any notes, write those notes down. So if you're like me, and like a lot of artists, a lot of us do a lot of things. We are multidisciplinary artists, pretty much all of us. So you can mix and match. For this residency that I just applied to, you know, I have some visual work, I have some film work, I have some audio spoken word work, and I'm also a writer. So I literally submitted samples on each of these. So visual, 1 MB max each. Audio, give us 1 minute. Video, 1 minute. Literary, 2 pages, 1 sample. You can kind of mix and match. And I know we can get real in the weeds about this, like, well, what if I have this and what if I have this? We can probably accommodate it. We have a really robust artistic support mechanism where you can call us, set up appointments with us. So if you get down in the nitty gritty and it's like, well, do I submit this or should I submit this? We can walk you all through that. So don't get too gunked up with that yet, but you can mix and match to show the breadth and diversity of your disciplines. Okay. Next sample or next slide. So I think this is the gold. I think this is the real gold that nobody really ever pays enough attention to. Your work sample summary. Yes, your work samples and your documentation matters, but this is the only place in the entire application where you can really kind of tell us a lot more, give us a lot more description, context, inspiration, or relevance about this work. Yes, it should include your name, the title of the work, your medium, the dimensions, the date of completion or performance or publication. That's bare minimum. You should definitely have that in your work sample summary. But you can also indicate all of those other details, like I made this in response to COVID. I made this in response, you know, with a I don't know, coterie of quilters in response to the murder of George Floyd. Whatever it is, you have the moment here to really kind of elaborate and give a lot more information than your work samples might otherwise allow. To give guidance to the panelists, I would please ask to let us know where you want us to start your video or start your music, start reading, show us where. It's not very nice to submit like, here is my novel. You know, that's a big clunky sample. You know, you can get choose a couple pages, create a PDF so we know, and I'm going to read this page and this page. Or like me, I submitted videos and I'll say, ideally, you know, break it down. Show me the 1 minute, show me the 2 minutes, whatever it is of that. That's ideal. But say it's a 10-minute film, then tell us, I want you to watch this from 2 minutes, 3 seconds to 3 minutes and 4 seconds, right? Clearly indicate that. So you're really kind of hosting us. Like, come over here and look at this. I want to show you what I've got here. Just look at it from here to here. Like when I'm showing you my house, I'll show you a lot of things, but I'm probably not going to show you my closet, right? You can kind of show us what you want. It's very helpful. Next slide. Okay, this is where we depart. This is where it gets a little different. Everything that we've talked about so far is pretty standard fare for most grant applications. Here's where we get a little different. Our narrative questions. Next slide. There are 4 of them. So again, this is a practice-based grant. It's not a project-based grant. And it's important to really continue to harp on because it's so different from what artists are used to. We have to jump through so many hoops. We can't believe that someone would just give us $10,000 to help our practice. Don't we have to do something? Don't we have to, like, jump through a lot of hoops? We really try to minimize that with this. We want to know what the evolution of your creative practice has been over the previous few years. What have you been pursuing? How has the work evolved? And why has it evolved in that way? Have you faced challenges or constraints in making work? Okay, you get 250 words. Now, I'll give you a tip on how to do this. I'm part of a writing workshop, and we always get a prompt every week, and then we have 10 minutes to write about it. And the deal is you just keep writing. You might just don't pick up your pen. Just let your creative flow answer these questions. So I would copy and paste these questions onto another document, set the timer on your phone for 10 minutes, and just answer those questions. And then in 10 minutes, you have a first draft. And then you can go back and start to scratch through, see what's worth keeping, what kind of goes in the trash. And that's a really easy way. And you could complete this section of the application in 40 minutes, right? I mean, at least first draft. We don't want you to spend too much time. We want you to spend a good amount of time, but we understand that applying for a grant takes time and takes thought. That's just a way to kind of maximize your time. So with creative practice evolution, I'll use myself as an example. I was making my last film, Land and Flower, and it was going to be a very different documentary that was focused on talking heads and people and the elderly women of my home county who were caring for their tallgrass prairie remnants. Well, then COVID happened. So I couldn't endanger these elderly women by being face to face with them. So I had to change how I was going about this film, and I made it a people-less film. So it was just centered on the land. That's how that changed. And that was the challenge that I faced. You might want to do large scale work, but you have a really small studio that has really low walls. So that's a constraint. That is a challenge. You might need machinery that could help you with your output, right? I have a friend, Steph Payton, over at Arts on Main in Van Buren, and she received a grant from us a few years ago, and she used part of her money for a 3D printer for ceramics. Well, that revolutionized and advanced her career and really made possible what was not possible before. That's exactly what this grant is for. She didn't get a Catalyze grant. She doesn't live within those 16 counties I mentioned, but that's a perfect example of how this could help you develop into the next leg of your career, okay? Next slide. So that's 1. 2 is, what is the future of your creative practice? We're artists, we're dreamers, we're Imagineers. So put on your envisioning hat and think about, where do you want your creative practice to be in 5 years? What is that? Is it 2028? What do you want that to look like? And allow yourself to dream. And then also, I think this is so important, how do you determine and measure success for yourself within your practice? So many people, and myself included, it's like we measure success based off of someone else's success. It's like, oh, well, Mary Jane got a full solo exhibition, so that's success for me. I want what Mary Jane has. Is that your success, or is that someone else's success? And how do you determine that? It will give you a lot of agency over your career and also keep you from a lot of hurt feelings. And believe you me, I've had them for myself because I was putting my success in the hands of someone else. It's like, if I don't get this grant, I'm not successful. If I don't get this show, I'm not successful. Those things aren't true. Okay. So how do you determine and measure your success? Did you complete such and so painting, so many paintings in this year? Did you write 1,000 pages a day during National Novel Writing Month? What is it? I mean, that's success. And that's success that you articulate. We believe in self-determined success. So this is your place to share that. Okay. Next slide. All right. So I told you we don't ask about budgets, but this is kind of our tricky way of asking. If you are awarded this grant of $10,000, how do you intend to use those funds to further your artistic practice? How are you going to use 10,000? Again, we all play that lottery game. Like, if I won the lottery, I would do this, and this. Well, you might win the lottery of $10,000, right? What would you do for your art practice? Would you buy a 3D printer? We had one guy who applied for a grant several years ago. He didn't get it for this, but he made a compelling argument. He does a lot of social practice work that required him to get out to a lot of marginalized communities. He needed a car to do the work. There was a real compelling argument for that, right? So how can you use these funds to further your artistic practice? That's the question, right? Next slide. I think this is our third or fourth. Professional development. Okay. So this slide always kind of makes me laugh a little bit because you can kind of copy and paste a lot of this as your answer. Don't tell Kyle I told you that. But considering the criteria for this grant, explain how participating in the Catalyze retreat, learning alongside a dedicated small group of your peers, accessing one-on-one mentoring sessions with artist peer facilitators, and building a network of regional artists will be beneficial to the development of your creative practice. Well, Mid-America and Catalyze, I think that by participating in a Catalyze retreat, learning alongside a dedicated small group of peers, yada, yada, will be beneficial to my development of my creative practice. There, I gave you a freebie. Now, here's the rub. What strengths will you bring to share with your peers? We don't believe that it's all like what I can get. It's also what I can give. We don't, like I said, we don't believe in a top-down approach like I know more than you. We all have gifts. We all bring strengths. And we believe in a sharing economy of sharing those strengths and identifying who does what. Maybe you're a good framer. Maybe I'm a good writer. Maybe, we have that in the room so we can look to each other and build out our community, build out our networks based off of what skills and strengths we bring to the table and to the group. Okay, and next slide. Okay, so those were the 4 narrative questions. So how do we review you? Well, first, artistry, right? Your work samples are great. You demonstrate artistic excellence. You're committed to your work. You have an active creative practice for that minimum of 3 years. And you show motivation to continue and to further evolve. Okay. Then our next is program readiness. You will have the desire to advance your career and deepen your practice, engage with our strategic management process, and an interest in sharing your work, your process with this network. A few years ago, we gave a grant to someone and they showed up to, this was not for this program, it was another program, but they showed up to the retreat and they left by 10:30 in the morning. They was like, this is not for me. So we were able to give that money to an alternate artist, but we let this artist know that this was part of it. And they went ahead and applied knowing that that would be a part of it. We were able to give that money to another artist, but that artist was not able to participate in this first professional development weekend where I think really that's where a lot of the gold is. And so Be honest with yourself. If being at the Capitol Hotel and sitting in that room with all that lattice work and eating really well and meeting a lot of artists and committing to that over that weekend of June 22nd and 23rd, 2024 is not for you, it's not for you, right? Be honest with yourself. If that sounds terrible to you, trust your instinct. And then finally, what is the impact of this funding on your practice? You will clearly identify the ways in which these funds will impact your careers and creative practices. These identified impacts should relate to your previous challenges and or desired futures. Remember, those are the two of those narrative questions. What do I want my career to, what are the challenges that I've had in my creative practice? And then where do I want my career to be in 5 years? Right? So how can this funding, how can that $10,000 assuage those challenges and constraints that you've had in your creative practice? And how can they catapult you to your artist self in 2028? That should answer that. Okay. Next slide. So we have a panel review process, and we hire artists and art professionals to serve as panelists. I've served on panelists where it's like bankers or bankers' wives or bankers' trophy husbands, or, you know, people who, I don't know, want to dabble in the arts. We commit to hiring artists and paying artists and arts professionals because we want artists to review each other, be like to like, know what they're talking about. These panelists work independently, evaluating each application using our review criteria that we just mentioned of artistic excellence, impact of funds, and program readiness. We pay our panelists in advance to review our implicit bias documents and video, read our equity and diversity statement, as well as our strategic plan and values, and to affirm this review prior to beginning the panel process. Then we also have like to like. So we won't have choreographers or dancers judging or adjudicating like a sculptor's work. It's like to like, writers to writers, visual artists to visual artists. So everybody is in their wheelhouse. Then the applications with the highest degree of consensus enter into a lottery process from which 25 grantees will be drawn to represent a balanced cohort, including a diversity of gender, age, ethnicity, geography, and artistic discipline. I'm going to tell you this. So in every grant application process I've ever seen, it generally works out to thirds. A third of them should all be funded. A third of them are fine. And a third of them are non-competitive. So generally, it's probably going to be like about 30 to 35 might reach consensus. They get, you know, Howie Mandel and Heidi Klum, they all hit their buzzers, you know, you've got consensus. So then all of those artists that have gotten consensus will then get into a lottery, and then they will just be drawn. That gets us out of any implicit bias, because generally how that works is you get to alternates. It's like, well, we have a sculptor from Hot Springs and we have a rapper from Pine Bluff. Well, that's apples to oranges. So to clear that up and clear up any implicit bias, it's then a lottery. They met the consensus of excellence, program readiness, and of impact of funding. We can choose. I have a friend, Perry on Herd, last year. He was a finalist. He didn't make the cut. And I saw him and I was like, man, Perry, I'm so sorry. You know, he came to my info session. I was like, you know, I'm not a panelist on this. I'm just telling you about it. But he wasn't even hurt. He was like, no, it wasn't even a thing. I was pleased to get as far as I got, you know, and it was validating to get there. And I respect that. And I've felt that myself in other things that I haven't gotten. So we're very transparent about the review process. Yeah. Okay. Next slide. It's my guy, Raw Howard. I don't know if any of you know Ryan Howard, really great photographer, filmmaker, music man. from Little Rock. He was of our cohort, our current cohort. So also our poster boy this year. So applications are open from November 1st. They're already open. They close on what? January 22nd, 2024 at 5 p.m. I really encourage you to go get started. Open up the application. After this, make me a promise and that you'll go to the website, open up the application, and at least see what you've got. See what it is. And get it started. You can already enter in your name, your address, all of that information just to get it started. I would also recommend that you copy and paste each of those questions over to a separate document and then start composing on that. Do not ever compose within the application, because invariably what happens, and I tell you this from experience, you compose and then you cut it and copy it and you want to put it somewhere else, and then it becomes all gobbledygook. You're like, oh, I lost it. What was that cool thing I wrote about myself in that section? And it's gone. But if you keep it over in a separate document, you fine tune it over there and then copy and paste once you're ready to move it over into the actual application. That way, you're safeguarding yourself from something turning up kind of looking unedited and funny. And you're also saving it for future grant opportunities, so you can take those brilliant words that you crafted and save them for another opportunity and use them again. Okay. So January 22nd is the deadline, like I said. February and March, we will be going through the application review and panel adjudication. On April 15th, we will announce those awards. Like I said, June 22nd and 23rd is the retreat weekend that'll be held at the Capitol Hotel, downtown Little Rock. And then on that day, we also distribute your funds. You'll walk away with $10,000. We don't do it in parts. We trust you with the money. You don't have to jump through hoops to get the second half. You get $10,000. We trust artists. Next slide. Is there a next slide? Oh. Yes, Katie, the $10,000 is, that will be taxed. It is, you're going to need to save your receipts, right? So whatever your practice is, save those receipts, save your mileage. You know, people harped at me about mileage for so long. When I did my first film, I wrote off $5,000 toward, that year was the year I won a $10,000 grant. And I was able to write half of it off just by that. You write off your professional associations, you write off your mileage to the retreat, you write off, you know, any supplies, subscriptions. You know, I'm a filmmaker, so I get to write off HBO Max. I can write off all kinds of stuff, your Dropbox, any of that stuff, save those receipts, because that can go against that $10,000, but you should be doing that already for any of your practices. Yeah. I feel like there was more slideshow. Can we get the slide back up? I don't know. Maybe now's a good time. I don't know where Kyle went. Let's see. Maybe he dropped off. Well, so we were toward the end. My pro tips, I'm going to try to memorize what I had said. One thing I do want to talk about, we offer a robust application support. I think I had mentioned this before. So if you do have questions as you get down into it, oh, Kyle did just submit, or he put that over in the chat. The ma.org/Catalyze link will take you to our big page where it has all of the details that I've shared, as well as many, many more. as well as contact information, artist services at ma.org. I'm David at ma.org. You can reach out to any of us. You can schedule a one-on-one with anybody on the artist services team, and we can walk you through that. We are currently offering office hours November 1st through January 22nd on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from noon to 1. You can contact any one of us, or we also do 5 to 6 p.m. On those days as well. So you can schedule with us. Our office will be closed between Christmas and January 1st, but we will have an open office hours kind of study hall Zoom on January 22nd, and that will be open all day from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So when you're in that crunch time, you can hop on that Zoom link, and we are glad to answer those last minute questions because we know that there will be several. And what else? I would say ask questions, do the research, start early. Get that, take my advice of writing those 10-minute prompts because you're going to get far ahead. And I would just do it now while it's fresh in your brain. You're excited. You're really feeling it. Do it now. And then you have some time over Thanksgiving break, over Christmas break to really fine tune it. You have 2 ideal holiday times to really have some uninterrupted time to work on this. And then finally, don't take it personally. If you don't get it, you're still a good artist. This is not going to make you or break you. It might give you $10,000, but you're still an artist. I'm going to tell you a quick story. Several years ago, I was up for our big $10,000 prize here in Kansas City for generating performing artists. I had been a finalist 6 times. And I would be so GD mad. It's like I have not gotten this 5 different times. What do I have to do to get this award, right? What do I have to do to get this grant? And it wasn't until my 6th and final time up to bat, and I was standing behind the panelists, we were watching my 5-minute work sample, and I realized that I hadn't lost 5 times before. I actually won 6 times. Because over that 6 times, each year there were 4 national panelists who were brought in, and every year they rose me up to a finalist rank. I won 24 times. I only won $10,000 once, but I won 24 times. And that changed the whole perspective for me. I will also say that if you are ever given the opportunity or have opportunities to serve as a panelist, do it. Please take it. I applied for Artist Inc. the first year and I didn't get in. And now I'm one of the people who helps run the program. There's a lot to be said for resilience. And a lot of people, and I've heard it, I was just down in y'all's area. They're like, well, I applied last year and I didn't get it. So it's obviously not for me. A lot of people self-select out who shouldn't, because generally it's those people who are in that middle. They didn't maybe get all the consensus, but they're right up close. They are the B+, right? And so many people fall off and give up. It's like, don't give up. You've already applied. You already have your artist bio, your statement, dust it off, brush it up, and keep applying. It's like Wayne Gretzky said, you get 1,000 or 100% of all the shots you don't take. Keep making the shot. Okay. I think that, then I also want to give a shout out to our other program, like I said, Artist Inc. If you need some time to clarify your application or work on those artist statements or bios, we offer a free program. It's underwritten by Arkansas Arts Council. We see you, Patrick. We see you, Scarlett. Thank you so much. This is Arkansas statewide. It's a virtual 3-day session. It is free, and it is taking place January 12th through the 14th. Boy, that would be a really exceptional time to bring all of your items and then have a peer group to say, hey, I'm working on my artist statement. Would you review this? You will have built-in people to do that for you. And did I mention it's free? That's January 12th and 14th. You can find that on ma.org and our events. Take advantage of that. Please take advantage of that. It's so helpful. And then we also have applications open now for our Artist Inc. Live programs. They're going to be 8-week sessions. It's capped off at 25 participants. It is an adjudicated panel, but we will have communities in Pine Bluff, February 6th through March 26th, and also in Little Rock, April 2nd through May 21st. I am like a poster boy of the program. It really helped me see myself and claim the identity of an artist. When I started, I was a theater maker. I had no aspirations to become a filmmaker. It really showed me that I can really expand beyond what was my present and limited vision of what my career could be. So really put some time into thinking about what your career, what you want it to look like in 5 years. It's very, very helpful. Anyway, those, and also both of those I think are underwritten as well. So there isn't a financial impediment to being able to take advantage of those opportunities. All right, well that concludes my my talk. Questions from you all. My question is, where's Kyle?
Hey, Katie has a question though. Sorry, I'm just jumping in for Kyle, I guess.
Jump in,
Um,
Scarlett.
so Katie has asked how many applications were received for the first round and how many visual artists were funded out of the selected 25.
Oh God, I don't know. I think it was about 200 that received that 200 applications that we received. Obviously, we chose 25. And then what is the percentage of visual artists? You know, as I remember, I'm just trying to put myself back in the room, but it seemed to be pretty balanced, like 5, 5, 5, and 5 and 5. You know, we had literary, we had social practice, we had visual, we had musicians, and there was representation from all four corners of, you know, all directions of those 16 counties represented. It is
And
very
I
important.
oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I was gonna say your website has who won, right? I mean, you can find out
Yeah,
who the catalog.
it's on that Catalyze, it's on that Catalyze link page that Kyle put there. You can see those fellows. Yeah. Great question. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Scarlett. Yeah, Sasha.
Hey, thanks for the presentation. It was very helpful. And my question was about the work. I'm kind of a mixed media. My background is in visual art, two-dimensional works, but I started sculpting again. So I'm trying to kind of bring it together. As far as those 5 work samples, my main question is concerned with are the works supposed to be accredited in any way, or do they need to be shown in any exhibitions prior, or can there be just any works whatsoever, and could be personal projects that we haven't had a chance, let's say, to put in a gallery show or anything like that? Thank you.
Sure. Well, they don't have to have had appeared in an exhibition. It's really just the work itself. And I think you bring up an interesting point, and it was a question I received in Conway last week or week before last. We had an artist who wanted to pivot from, you know, they'd been doing one type of work and they wanted to kind of expand into a new realm. And so they asked, how would I submit work samples? And I think what you should do in that point, this seems to apply to you. Out of those 5, I would, again, you know, pick your best, highest quality samples. But if you have been working in one medium, I might do 3, 2. So 3 of your former work, but then 2 of sculpting work to show the trajectory. If you articulate that and like, how has your process evolved? How does your creative practice evolved? You'll talk about that. I want to move from, you know, mixed media to sculpture. So then in our work, since you've already introduced that into our minds, then we're going to automatically assume that you'll show us kind of that trajectory in your work samples. And that's also, again, don't forget, y'all, about that work sample summary. That's a great place to add context, inspiration, process, to kind of further articulate that. That's a great question. Are there any other questions? I think
I
we're
have
at
one.
105. Yeah, Scarlett.
I'll be real quick. Hey, it's good to see you too. I was wondering with so many applications, is it different panelists? Well, I guess two. Do different panelists take sections of this when they're reviewing? And secondly, should we, when we're thinking about writing, should we try to do the here's who we are, like very concise information, especially in the summary leading into more detailed stuff, sort of
Yes.
like the inverted pyramid in reporting, which sounds jargony now that I'm
Yes.
saying it, but
No, and that's a really great. I mean, front load it. There are going to be a lot of applications. Like I said, panelists review like. So panelists, there will be photographers will review, or visual to visual, performing to performing, literary to literary. And I would also say front load your applications. Don't bury what it is you're making. It's so frustrating when you're going through an application and it's not until the third paragraph you're like, oh, this is a film, right? Like, state what it is. Like, this project, Land and Flower, is a film about blah blah blah, or whatever it is. So immediately people can connect. Oh, Sasha is doing that project or doing this. This is what he does. This is what Adrian does. Make it memorable. Right, to use your inverted pyramid, that's a journalism thing. Put all the pertinent information at top and then get into the nitty gritty below, right? That's a good suggestion. Kay Searles?
Hi, yeah, I had a question about how closely people look at the category when they're reviewing applications. So I noticed last time that as you're fulfilling your application, you select from a drop down of like you could pick painter or designer. And I found that for me and maybe for other people, our specific medium or the type of work we're doing wasn't clearly listed there. So I had to pick something that was kind of related to what I do. How are those categories kind of looked at? And is it okay if you can't find one that directly speaks to what you do?
It is totally okay if you can't find one that speaks specifically to what you do. And in that case, like I said, I'm multidisciplinary. I generally pick that one. It also should kind of harken back to what is your creative practice now? Like Sasha said, moving to sculpture, or, I mean, he's probably a perfect candidate for multidisciplinary, but it's like, what are you moving to? Well, maybe sculpture, and find something that is close, but it's not, it's really it's a recording mechanism for us more so than anything else. We will sort probably, but most likely by your work samples to put like with like.
Okay, so when you say panelists review, like it's based on more the content and less the category you pick.
That's right. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Good question. I know it can get, that's bureaucratic drop down language, that we have to satisfy for funders and for, NEA, all of that. So it's more on the internal side. So sorry, you guys have to see some of that because it can be confusing. Any other questions? I know we're over an hour. I know y'all spent your time on your lunch hour with me.
Hi, I'm JD, and I think my question kind of goes along with the first question. I'm a singer-songwriter, but I also do like some advocate work along with that, and so I've helped produce some videos with my music, and so I'm kind of, do I submit audio or just kind of show how I'm kind of transitioning into they're kind of shorts with the music to address like domestic violence, how kids can make better, safer ideas, things like that.
Well, I would load it 3-2, include your audio and then maybe include a couple of work samples of your advocacy work and however that manifests itself. Your work samples should support how you're talking about your creative practice and how it's evolved and changing. Your work samples should undergird that. So whatever you write there, let your work samples support that. Yeah.
Lisa Kranichfeld has a question in the chat.
Hi, Lisa.
Are this year's review panelists the same as the last year's panelists, or some new, or a mix?
They'll all be new. Yeah. Okay, well, Sasha, yeah, one more question, and I'll let you guys
Just
go.
a very short one. You mentioned process work, but I kind of zoned out on the context when you said process. So process work is allowed within the 5 samples as well, or does it have to be all?
I would save the process. I would not use one of your process unless your process is just very, very innovative. I would talk about the process within the work sample summary and instead show the work as one of your work samples. Yeah.
Thank you.
Again, my david@ma.org is my email. Artist services, artist singular, services plural, @ma.org. And check out that website. It's got that page on our website. It's got a lot of gold and has all the links to sign up on Calendly with any one of us during all of these open office hours we have, as well as that big Zoom that we have on deadline day. And again, please, 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 if you have the time, do Artist Ink Express January 12th through 14th. It's such a great program and would be especially helpful 1 week before deadline. Great, you all. Well, stay in touch. Thank you so much for making art and being artists, and have a great weekend. And I hope to see you in Little Rock.